The 80s. Prince, Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston, Luther Vandross. Legends that defined a generation. But what about the artists who had the talent, the songs, the style, but never got their flowers? These weren't nobodies. These were signed artists with hit singles, Soul Train performances, and videos on BET. But somehow, time forgot them. Buried under the superstars were incredible voices that deserve so much more. Artists who made you move, made you feel, made you fall in love. These are 15 underrated 80s R&B artists you forgot existed. Time to bring them back.
Heart could be yours. Girl, please.
Number 15. Klique. This Dallas-based quintet gave us some of the smoothest grooves of the mid-80s, and somehow most people don't even know their name. Klique's 1985 hit Stop Doggin' Me Around
Stop, girl.
should have been massive. The production was tight, the vocals were on point, and that bass line, absolutely infectious. The song got radio play, Soul Train featured them. Everything seemed to be building, but their follow-ups didn't connect. The album didn't sell the way the label hoped.
Much longer.
And by the late 80s, Klique had disappeared. What makes their story frustrating is the wasted potential. They had the sound that defined mid-80s R&B. Slick production, tight harmonies, and grooves that made you move. But in an era dominated by megastars, being good wasn't enough. You had to be extraordinary. You needed hits, plural. Klique had one hit, and in the 80s music industry, that wasn't enough to sustain a career. Stop Doggin' Me Around occasionally pops up on 80s R&B playlists. But Klique? Most people under 40 have never heard of them. They proved that even with talent and a hit song, you could still be forgotten.
You better stop, girl.
Number 14. Dazz Band. Wait, some people remember Let It Whip, so Dazz Band isn't completely forgotten. But their entire catalog? Absolutely slept on. This Ohio funk R&B band had a string of solid hits in the early 80s. Let It Whip won a Grammy in 1983. Joystick kept the momentum going. But after the mid-80s, they faded from mainstream consciousness while continuing to make great music. The problem was their sound. Dazz Band was rooted in 70s funk, and by the mid-80s, R&B was going in a sleeker, more synthesized direction. Their organic, horn-heavy funk felt outdated to radio programmers chasing the latest trends. So while New Edition and Bobby Brown dominated the airwaves, Dazz Band quietly faded away. They're still performing today on the old-school R&B circuit. But their 80s run, after Let It Whip, is completely forgotten by most people. Dazz Band proved that winning a Grammy doesn't guarantee long-term relevance. Sometimes the industry just moves on. Number 13. Midnight Starr. Freakazoid and Operator were everywhere in the mid-80s. Midnight Starr was making futuristic R&B before anyone knew what that meant. This Kentucky group embraced synthesizers, drum machines, and electronic production at a time when many R&B acts were still relying on traditional instrumentation. Their 1986 album Headlines featured Midas Touch, which became their biggest hit. The sound was innovative. The production was cutting edge. But by the late 80s, internal conflicts tore the group apart. Key members Reggie and Vincent Calloway left to form Calloway, taking much of the group's creative energy with them. Midnight Starr continued, but without the Callaways, they couldn't recapture the magic. Their sound became dated as New Jack Swing took over. By 1990, a Midnight Starr was essentially done as a commercial force. What's tragic is that they were pioneers. They were doing electronic R&B before it became the standard. They influenced countless artists who came after. But ask someone under 35 about Midnight Starr, and you'll get blank stares. They deserved better. Their innovation deserved recognition. Instead, they became a trivia answer. Number 12. Evelyn Champagne. King Shame made her a disco star in 1977, but her 80s evolution into R&B, completely underrated. Evelyn King's 1981 album I'm in Love showed she could adapt. The title track was pure 80s R&B gold, synthesizers, strong vocals, and a groove that still works today. Then came Love Come Down in 1982, which should have cemented her as an 80s icon. The song was huge. Number 1 on the R&B charts, a crossover pop hit. But somehow, Evelyn King never became the household name she deserved to be. Her follow-ups charted, but nothing matched Love Come Down. And by the mid-80s, as new artists emerged, she got pushed to the background. Radio moved on. MTV rarely played her videos, and Evelyn Champagne King became that woman who sang Love Come Down, which is criminal because she had talent, real vocal ability, saw stage presence. Everything you needed to be a star, but the 80s music industry was brutal. If you weren't constantly evolving and delivering hits, you were replaced. Evelyn King kept making music through the 80s and beyond, but mainstream audiences forgot her. And that's music history's loss. Number 11. Ready for the World. This Michigan group gave us Oh Sheila in 1985, and for a minute, they were everywhere. The song was a perfect blend of synth pop and R&B.
All that really mattered was you were my girlfriend.
Melvin Riley's falsetto was distinctive, and the production was cutting edge for the time. Oh Sheila went to number 1. The album went platinum. Ready for the World looked like they were ready to dominate the late 80s. Then, nothing. Well, not nothing.
Baby, it's all that mattered to me.
They had other minor hits like Love You Down in 1986, but they never recaptured Oh Sheila magic. The problem? They were a studio creation more than a live band. And in the 80s, if you couldn't tour effectively and connect with audiences beyond the radio, your career stalled. Internal conflicts didn't help. Members left. The sound changed. And by the late 80s, Ready for the World was done as a mainstream act. Oh Sheila lives forever as an 80s classic. It's in movies, commercials, and throwback playlists. But Ready for the World? Most people don't even know the band's name. They just know the song. That's the cruelest form of being forgotten. Your art survives, but you don't. Number 10. Surface. Shower Me With Your Love. In 1989 was one of the smoothest slow jams of the late 80s. Surface had the vocals, the production, and the songs. But they came up at the wrong time. By 1989, New Jack Swing was taking over. Teddy Riley was redefining R&B, and Surface's traditional polished sound felt like it belonged to the mid-80s. Don't get it twisted, Surface had talent. Bernard Jackson's vocals were incredible. The harmonies were tight. The songwriting was solid. But timing is everything in music. And Surface's peak came just as the industry was shifting away from their sound. They had more success in the early 90s with The First Time, but by then, they were playing catch-up.
You looked into my eyes.
trying to adapt to New Jack Swing while maintaining their identity. It didn't work. Surface faded by the mid-90s, remembered only by die-hard R&B fans. Shower Me With Your Love still gets played on Quiet Storm radio. But Surface, the name doesn't register for most people. They were a casualty of changing trends. Good enough to have hits, not lucky enough to have sustained success. Number 9. Stacy Lattisaw. This is one of the most frustrating stories on this list. Stacy Lattisaw was a child prodigy who started recording at 12 years old. By the time she was a teenager in the early 80s, she was having legitimate R&B hits. Let Me Be Your Angel with Johnny Gill in 1980. Love on a Two-Way Street in 1981. Her voice was mature beyond her years. She had stage presence. She had the industry backing her. But as she grew up, her career stalled. The transition from teen star to adult artist is always difficult, and Stacy couldn't quite make it. By the mid-80s, her releases were charting lower. Radio was losing interest, and younger artists were taking her lane. Then, in 1986, she collaborated with Johnny Gill again on Perfect Combination. The album was solid, but it didn't revive either of their careers in a major way. By the late 80s, Stacy Lattisaw retired from music to focus on gospel. She walked away from secular R&B entirely. And just like that, a once promising superstar was gone. Stacy Lattisaw had the talent to be a legend. But timing, industry politics, and the challenges of growing up in the spotlight worked against her. Now, she's a footnote. A remember her? Artist that true 80s R&B fans cherish but casual listeners have never heard of. Number 8. Jeffrey Osborne. Wait, Jeffrey Osborne had hits. On the Wings of Love, You Should Be Mine, Stay With Me Tonight. He was everywhere in the mid-80s.
Run deep inside me.
So why is he on this list? Because despite those hits, Jeffrey Osborne is underrated and largely forgotten by younger generations. He came from LTD, where he was the lead vocalist before going solo in 1982. His voice was one of the smoothest in R&B.
Hurt you, baby. You know.
His ballads were masterclasses in emotion. But Jeffrey Osborne never became a household name like Luther Vandross or Peabo Bryson, despite being just as talented. Why? He wasn't flashy. He didn't court controversy. He just sang beautiful songs with incredible skill. And in the 80s, that wasn't always enough to break through to superstardom. Radio loved him. R&B fans adored him. But crossover pop success eluded him. His records sold well, but never went multi-platinum. By the 90s, Jeffrey Osborne was relegated to the adult contemporary / quiet storm lane. Respected, but not celebrated. Today, people know his songs, but they don't always know his name. That's the definition of underrated. When your art outlives your recognition. Jeffrey Osborne deserves to be mentioned alongside the greatest R&B vocalists of the 80s, but he rarely is, and that's a shame.
That's what I am.
Number 7. Kashif producer, musician, singer. Kashif was a genius who never got the credit he deserved. In the early 80s, Kashif was pioneering the use of synthesizers in R&B. His 1983 self-titled debut featured hits like I Just Gotta Have You, Lover Turn Me On. But Kashif was better known for the artists he produced. Whitney Houston, Evelyn King, Melba Moore. He was crafting the sound of 80s R&B from behind the board. As an artist, though, he never broke through to superstardom. His albums sold moderately. His singles charted but weren't massive pop crossovers. The problem? Kashif was an innovator in a lane that rewarded imitators. He was making futuristic R&B, but labels wanted safe, proven formulas. He kept releasing music through the 80s, but each album performed a little worse than the last. By the 90s, he'd stopped recording as a solo artist and focused entirely on production. Kashif passed away in 2016. And the tributes from fellow musicians showed how respected he was in the industry. But to the general public, unknown. He was a behind-the-scenes architect of 80s R&B who occasionally stepped into the spotlight. And when he did, he was brilliant. But brilliant doesn't always equal famous. And Kashif's legacy is known only to those who dig deep. Number 6. The Deele. Before Babyface and L.A. Reid became legendary producers, they were members of the Deele, an underrated R&B band from Cincinnati. The Deele's sound was ahead of its time. Sophisticated production, tight harmonies, and a blend of funk and soul that predated New Jack Swing. Their 1984 album, Material Things, was solid, but it was 1987's Eyes of a Stranger that should have made them stars. The title track is a masterpiece. Babyface's vocals, the lush production, the emotional depth, it had everything. But the Deele never broke through commercially. They were respected in the industry, but unknown to casual R&B fans. Why? Because Babyface and L.A. Reid were simultaneously building their production empire. They were making hits for Bobby Brown, Pebbles, and others. The Deele became a side project. And by 1989, the group had essentially dissolved as Babyface and L.A. Reid focused on production and solo careers. What's tragic is that the Deele was the blueprint for the sound that would dominate the 90s. But they never got to fully benefit from it. Babyface became a legend. L.A. Reid became an industry mogul. But the Deele? Forgotten by everyone except R&B historians. They deserved so much more. Number 5. Force MD's Tender Love is a classic. If you were alive in 1985, you know this song. It was everywhere. Force MDs were a Staten Island group that blended doo-wop harmonies with 80s R&B production. Their sound was unique. Street corner soul meets modern production. Tender Love was featured in the movie Crush Groove and became their signature song. It should have launched them into sustained superstardom. But follow-up success was limited. Love is a House charted in 1987, but nothing matched Tender Love. The group faced personal tragedies. Members died young. Drug issues plagued them. And by the 90s, Force MDs was barely functioning. What makes their story heartbreaking is that the talent was real. They could sing. They had chemistry. They had a sound that connected with people. But personal demons and industry challenges destroyed what should have been a legendary career. Tender Love lives forever. It's still played at weddings and on Quiet Storm radio. But Force MDs? Most people don't even remember the group's name, they just know the song. And that's the saddest kind of forgotten. Number 4. Stephanie Mills. Broadway legend. Incredible vocalist, multiple hit songs. And still underrated. Stephanie Mills came from the stage. She originated the role of Dorothy in The Wiz on Broadway. Her voice was powerhouse level from day one. In the 80s, she had legitimate hits. Never Knew Love Like This Before in 1980 won a Grammy. Two Hearts, featuring Teddy Pendergrass in 1981 was massive. Throughout the 80s, she kept delivering. The Medicine Song, I Have Learned to Respect the Power of Love, Secret Lady. But somehow, Stephanie Mills never became the icon she deserved to be. Why? She wasn't flashy. She wasn't controversial. She just sang her heart out every single time. And in the 80s, that wasn't always enough to break through the noise. Whitney Houston, Anita Baker, and others dominated the female R&B vocalist conversation. Stephanie Mills was always mentioned, but never at the top of the list. Today, younger R&B fans barely know her name. They might know Never Knew Love Like This Before, but they don't know her. Stephanie Mills is a vocalist's vocalist. Singers know how incredible she is, but casual fans, they forgot or never knew. That's criminal, because Stephanie Mills could sing, past, present, and future tense. Number 3. Howard Hewett. The former lead singer of Shalimar went solo in 1986 and delivered some of the smoothest R&B of the late 80s. I'm For Real, Stay, Say Amen. Howard Hewett had the voice. Silky, smooth, with incredible range. His solo albums were critically acclaimed. His live performances were stunning. He had everything you needed to be a major star. But he never quite broke through to that top tier. Why?
Play our favorite video.
Timing and competition. The late 80s had Luther Vandross, Freddie Jackson, Jeffrey Osborne, and others fighting for the same lane. Howard Hewett was competing against legends. And while he was incredible, the market was oversaturated. His albums sold respectably. His singles charted. But he never had that one massive crossover hit that would have elevated him to household name status. By the 90s, New Jack Swing had changed the game, and Howard Hewitt's traditional R&B style felt out of step with the times. He kept recording and performing, building a devoted following. But mainstream recognition eluded him. Today, real R&B heads know Howard Hewett. They recognize his talent. They've seen him perform and know he's one of the greats. But to everyone else, he's forgotten. A name without a face, a voice without recognition. And that's a tragedy. Number 2. Atlantic Starr. Always is one of the biggest ballads of the late 80s. It was everywhere in 1987. But Atlantic Starr's entire career before and after Always? Largely forgotten. This group had been grinding since the late 70s. Send For Me, Silver Shadow, Secret Lovers. They had hits throughout the early to mid-80s. But Always was the one. The career-defining moment. The song that should have cemented their legacy. Except it didn't. After Always, Atlantic Starr faded quickly. Follow-ups didn't connect. The lineup changed. And by the early 90s, they were done as a commercial force. What's frustrating is that Atlantic Starr had been good. They weren't one-hit wonders. They'd been delivering quality R&B for years. But the music industry has a short memory. And if you can't sustain momentum after a massive hit, you get forgotten. Always gets played at weddings to this day. It's an 80s R&B standard. But ask someone under 30 who Atlantic Starr is, and you'll get blank stares. They prove that even a massive hit doesn't guarantee lasting recognition. Sometimes you peak, and the industry just moves on without you. Secret love. Number 1. Freddie Jackson. This might be controversial because Freddie Jackson had major success in the mid-80s. Rock Me Tonight, You Are My Lady, Tasty Love, Have You Ever Loved Somebody?
You are my lady.
These were huge. So why is he number 1 on this list? Because despite all that success, Freddie Jackson is criminally underrated and largely forgotten today. In the mid-80s, Freddie Jackson was positioned to be the next Luther Vandross. He had the voice, the songs, the presence. His first 2 albums went platinum. He dominated R&B radio. He was everywhere. But by the late 80s, his momentum slowed. New artists emerged, trends changed, and Freddie Jackson couldn't quite maintain his position at the top. He kept making music through the 90s and 2000s. But commercial success faded. Radio moved on. Today, Freddie Jackson performs on the R&B oldies circuit. Fans who lived through the 80s remember and love him. But younger generations?
You're everything I need more.
They have no idea who Freddie Jackson is. And that's insane. Because at his peak, Freddie Jackson was one of the best R&B vocalists in the game. Not good, best. He should be mentioned alongside Luther, Peebo, and Jeffrey Osborne, but he's not. Freddie Jackson is the ultimate underrated 80s R&B artist. Massively successful in his time, completely forgotten now. And that's why he's number 1.
Can resist your...
From Klique to Freddie Jackson, these 15 artists gave us incredible music. Songs that defined the 80s, voices that moved us, talent that deserved lasting recognition. But the music industry is brutal. Success today doesn't guarantee memory tomorrow. These artists proved that even with hits, even with talent, even with Grammy awards, you can still be forgotten. But not anymore. Not if we keep their music alive. Thanks for remembering with us. If you loved rediscovering these underrated legends, hit that subscribe button. Up next, we're uncovering 15 more forgotten 80s R&B artists who deserve their flowers. Keep the legacy alive.